Hey, Mighty Habit Makers, welcome back. It's Steven here, and we like to dig deep into the stuff that matters.
Today we're diving head first into the inner workings of the Trump White House. Buckle up. So we're going to be looking at Fear, Trump in the White House by Bob Woodward. This book, really kind of shook things up when it was released. I mean, it's just packed with all these insider accounts. And it paints this really vivid picture of what it was like behind the scenes during those first few years of the Trump administration. And one of the things that really jumped out at me was just how chaotic things seem to be. We're not just talking like your usual political drama here. It's like a whole other level of dysfunction and infighting that's almost hard to believe. I mean, can you even imagine working in a place where you're constantly worried about what impulsive decision might come down the pipeline next? Like, talk about stressful. The book even talks about aides like Gary Cohn and Rob Porter literally having to remove documents from Trump's desk just to prevent him from signing things that got like major consequences. I mean, talk about a high pressure job. I don't think I would lasted a day. And this wasn't just like a one-time thing either. It seems like this kind of behavior was pretty common. It really makes you wonder what that says about the level of trust and communication within the administration. And it wasn't just internal chaos either. Fear also sheds light on Trump's very confrontational style, especially when it came to dealing with military and intelligence officials. It's like, instead of relying on their expertise, he often just seemed to go with his gut, which, well, you can imagine, created a lot of friction. Take North Korea, for instance. The book talks about all these internal struggles over how to handle the situation. This was when tensions were really high, remember? With all the missile tests and the heated rhetoric and everything, I can only imagine what a pressure cooker that whole environment must have been. On one hand, you have these experienced military and intelligence officials advising caution and diplomacy. And then on the other, you have a president who's, known for his unpredictable and often aggressive approach. The book really gets into the nitty-gritty of these debates, and it's fascinating to see how these personal relationships and power dynamics really played a role in how U.S. foreign policy was shaped. And of course, there's the Iran nuclear deal. And this was a huge deal, no pun intended. It was a complex agreement that took years to negotiate. It was a major foreign policy achievement of the Obama administration. But it was also something that Trump had been very critical of during his campaign. So it's not surprising that the book spends a lot of time on the internal battles over what to do about it. Yet some advisors arguing that staying in the deal was the best way to keep Iran's nuclear ambitions in check, while others were pushing for a more hard-line approach. It sounds like there was a lot of disagreement, even among Trump's own team. What I thought was interesting is that the book suggests that Trump himself wasn't even totally convinced about pulling out of the deal at first. He apparently went back and forth on it several times. But ultimately he decided to withdraw, which, well, obviously had huge implications for the region and beyond. But it's not even just about specific policies or decisions. One of the things that really comes through in Fear is this feeling of distrust and paranoia. It's just pervasive throughout the White House. It seems like people were constantly second-guessing each other, worried about leaks, and afraid to speak their minds. It sounds like even those closest to Trump were walking on eggshells all the time, never knowing what might set him off or who might end up in his bad books. It's almost Shakespearean, the level of intrigue and backstabbing. It makes you wonder how anyone could even get anything done in that kind of environment. One thing that really struck me while I was reading this was how the book portrays Trump himself. He comes across as someone who is deeply insecure, easily swayed by flattery, and often lacking even a basic understanding of how the government works. It paints a picture of a man who is driven more by his own ego and desire for power than by any real sense of public service or commitment to the country. It's both fascinating and a little bit scary, if I'm being honest. I mean, it really makes you wonder how someone like that could rise to the highest office in the land. And it raises some serious questions about the state of American politics. It's easy to get caught up in all the drama of the personalities. But I think the real value of a book like Fear is that it kind of makes us step back and think about the bigger picture. Like, what does this chaotic and, dysfunctional presidency actually tell us about our political system? And what are the long-term consequences of all the decisions that were made during that time? Take the Iran nuclear deal, for example. Pulling out of that agreement, I mean, it didn't just strain relations with Iran, it also damaged our credibility with our allies, the ones who helped negotiate the deal in the first place. It's hard to say what the long-term consequences of all that will actually be. Will it make it harder to negotiate future agreements with Iran? Will it, embolden other countries to pursue nuclear weapons? I mean, these are questions we're still trying to figure out, even today. And then there's the impact on our own domestic politics. I mean, Fear really highlights those deep divisions within our society, and how those divisions were kind of exploited during the Trump presidency. It makes you wonder if those divisions have healed at all, or if they've just gotten worse in the years since. And, how do we even move forward as a country when we can't even agree on the basic facts or shared values for that matter? These are tough questions, but they're questions that we really need to be asking ourselves. And I think books like Fear can at least help us start those conversations. Because, ultimately understanding the past is the only way we can shape the future, right? If we can learn from the mistakes that were made, maybe, just maybe, we can avoid repeating them. Or maybe we can start to build a society that's, more functional, more civil, and definitely more just. So there you have it. Our deep dive into Fear by Bob Woodward. It's a wild ride, I'll give you that, and it's definitely a book that will stick with me for a long time. I hope you found it as thought-provoking as I did, and I'd really encourage you to check it out for yourself if you haven't already. Thanks for listening to Mighty Habits, and I'll catch you next time for another deep dive into, another fascinating topic.